An Interview with Bruce Allen by Aidan Hennessy. About a month ago, I had the opportunity to sit down with Bruce Allen, one of Canada's most accomplished and respected talent managers in the music industry. Bruce has managed the likes of Bryan Adams, Michael Bublé, Bob Rock, Red Ryder, Jan Arden, Anne Murray, The Offspring, Bachman Turner Overdrive, Loverboy, Prism, and the list goes on. With over 5 decades of experience, Bruce has seen the ups and the downs of the music industry from a unique and involved first-hand perspective. In this interview, I sit down with Bruce Allen, listen to his stories, and ask him about his current views on music culture today. Here is that interview. Bruce, thank you for sitting down with me.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, so the fun question that I wanted to start off with is I'm in the middle of watching Miami Vice for the first time.
Yeah.
And in the episode Smuggler's Blues with Glenn Frey is the guest star on that episode.
Yeah.
It starts off with Lunatic Fringe by Red Ryder.
Right.
And I was wondering if you were involved with setting that up.
Well, I was there for that record. The thing about that is that the Miami Vice people called us, and that's most of the time how it happens. They hear something, they want to use it. They phone the record, phone me, or they phone the record company. The record company phones me. I go back to the record company. I talk to Tom. How much do we want to get for this song?
Right.
Blah 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 blah. And then the deal's done, and away it goes. That's
right.
That's what usually happens, and that's what happened on that one. And that's a great song for that show.
Yeah,
that was a long time ago when I was still managing Tom. But that was I forgot about that.
Yeah,
you brought it up.
Yeah. That's why I thought it would be a fun one to start with. Yeah,
that was one of his best albums he ever did. They ever did. But that's when the band started to disintegrate. I can always look back and say that's when the band was in trouble, or when they started to disintegrate.
Yeah,
and it's not of the same caliber that he was in those days. And those were he didn't have big hits. He had Lunatic Fringe. He had a couple other ones in the States until the Cowboys covered some song that was a big song for him, but it was a copy song. I can't remember. And that's where he made the most money.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah. It wasn't Life is a Highway, was it?
That's it.
That's the one. Highway. Yeah. That was a huge
song. As I get older, I can't remember all the damn songs I've worked with, but Life is a Highway was a bigger song when it was covered than when he did it.
Yeah.
And that's really good if that happens.
Yeah. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about was, what were some characteristics when you were a kid, a little older, a teenager, that you could see in yourself that led to you being successful as a music manager?
Well, you see, that's a trick question. My father died when I was 12.
Yeah.
And so my mother raised her 2 boys, and I went, as soon as I got out of school, I went immediately to work. And I started working down at the Kenworth plant, building Kenworth trucks, because what I wanted to get some money. And after about 2-3 years at the Kenworth building truck bodies, the guys knew that I was a fan of music, and they knew that I went to the clubs at night and stuff like that. And when we were time off, you're on a circuit then. You used to come in at 8 a.m, or you could work at the afternoon shift or in the graveyard.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, I got to see a lot of music. I went to see a lot of music. I collected records. They knew it, and they told me, they said, "Listen, you got to do something better than this. You're getting really comfortable with the money because you're not used to having that kind of money coming in. But believe me, this gets to be dull.
Right.
Down the line, the same line all the time, trucks after truck after truck." He says, "You're not going to want that. So, you should look around for something else." So I went back to school until my second year of university, and then I dropped out again because at the time between the first year and second year, I put together a booking agency, and the booking agency was put together a fluky way. A friend of mine, Bill Lassiter, played for the BC Lions. He had a play called Lassiter's Den out on Broadway.
Right.
And Broadway and Victoria Drive. And he put a band in there. He brought a band in that played the Beatles music.
Was it five-man cargo?
Yeah, 5-man cargo.
Gotcha.
Brought them in. They're actually they came from Hong Kong. Hong Kong. And they came into Canada, or emigrated to Canada, and went back and played music, started playing music. And, they got it. Bill hired them, nothing to do with me. And then they were really interesting because our city in Vancouver here was based on R&B music. We got a lot of big bands, a lot of bands with black front men,
Right.
and stuff like that, and rock and roll bands, and knocking off the charts and playing the same stuff as everybody else. But these guys played English music, okay, which wasn't a lot of it in Vancouver got played. And I'm saying early Beatles, early Rolling Stones, all that stuff, they did that stuff. And the audiences started to flock there. So all of a sudden, Bill had a club he was sold out with doing big business.
Right.
But they weren't very good. And in those days, you had to do 4 or 5 sets a night. And they could sing it, they could play it, but they couldn't sell it.
Right.
So he says, you've seen enough shows. And I've been brought up seeing Ike and Tina Turner before, Ike and Tina Turner before it was just Tina.
Right.
Ike and Tina Turner, James Brown, all those people came through because they came up from Seattle and then played here.
Right.
And he says, can you put a show together for these kids? And I said, yeah, okay, Bill, I'll come in. And I'm still working. And I said, yeah, let's take a shot at it. So I put the band together, got them together, had a conversation, talked about making a show out of it, not just playing music for dancers. So it got bigger and bigger. I quit my job and just dealt with them for a while because they could when they didn't work, they could work in schools. They could, they were getting dances. So you make a living out of it. But all of a sudden, because they got so big, the other clubs in town, of which there were many, went around and decided that, we got to get some new talent. We want to get this band. How do we get the band?
Right.
So I said, they came to me and I said to the people, I said, listen, you go there. I want the booking rights for your club.
Right.
I was taking labor economics when I was in school. I some kind of dreamed to be Jimmy Hoffa or something. So I said, here's what you should do. You put your band, I'll take your band. You take it for 2 weeks down there at Farrell's Retreat or one of those clubs, and I'll put another band in here because I had the booking rights to that club. And then I wanted the booking rights to your club. And then it ended in a time when if 5-Man Cargo, after that, 2 years after that, I had 17 clubs downtown that I booked.
Right,
I was the only guy who put the bands in there. I got paid all the time. I didn't chase guys for their money. And that's when, of course, the club business was really booming. It was way before, things turned to records and dancing like that. It was bands, live music. And we were a good city for it. And like I said, I had 17 rooms and doing really well. And then there's a knock on the door, and Randy Bachman came in one day and asked if I could help him out because he just left the Guess Who.
Right. Cool.
So that changes everything now.
Yeah.
But he changed the Guess Who, but he was trying to put together a band. He had his brother, 2 brothers in it. His one brother was the manager, and Robbie Bachman was the drummer, and another Bachman played rhythm guitar, and Fred Turner, that's what it was. And he said, I need work while I'm paying these guys, I need work to pay them. So he says, can you work me? And I said, okay. Well, he says, can you come up and see us? And I said, well, where are you playing? He says, we're playing in Fort McMurray. And I said, okay, when you're playing that? He said, next week. I said, okay, I'll come up and see you. I flew up to Port McMurray. I saw them. And Randy could get away with it because he'd play the Guess Who hits.
Right.
Fred Turner was a different singer, and Randy was a different singer than Burton Cummings. But they could get through those songs, and people knew them, and they were, they did a good job. And Randy was the legendary guy in that band. Him and Burt were the writers about a lot of that stuff. So he came, brought him into Vancouver. He lived out in New Westminster, and his guys bought houses or rented houses and lived there, and they worked out of my office. I took them over. But Randy was not happy with playing the bar scene. He's done that bar scene before, but it was great. It paid everybody off, but he was writing songs. So he said, you know what? I want to get back in the big time music business, and can we maybe shop the record? I said, I don't know how to shop a record. He said, well, we'll find out how to shop. Well, I'll tell you how to shop the record. And he guided me, and he sent it out, and a couple people liked it when we sent it to them, but they passed. And then we took a lot of things that those people said, maybe changed a couple songs, something weren't strong enough, maybe a mix on this or something, whatever they wanted. We tried to make the record better, and all of a sudden we sent them out again. And we got out of 16 companies we sent it to, 15 passed, 1 didn't. And that was at Mercury Records out of Chicago. And a guy named what was his name? I'll give it to you later.
Okay.
He came and he said to Randy, like, I'd like to look at the band and sign the band. So he came out. I got him a big job at the Cave, and we're still there then. And he played in the Cave, and the guy came to see him, and he loved him. He said, "We want to sign this act."
Right.
And Randy said, "Okay, well, I'd like to talk to the boys." And Charlie Fash was his name. And he says, "I want to talk to the boys, and can we have a week to think about it?" He says, "Well, you can have a week, but he says that's all you get." He says, "I think there's something here, and I'd like to get involved." So I said, "Randy, why didn't we just do it there? We got turned down 15 times out of 16 labels." He says, "We got to have time to think." He says, "Listen, I want to ask you something. Would you manage the band?" I said, "How can I manage the band?" I said, "I don't manage a band before." He said, "Well, listen," he says, "I can't go to these meetings and say, I want this and I want that and I want this and I want that and you got to do this." He says, "I can't do that. I got to have somebody say he wants, we want, they want, anything." But he says, "I can't. I'm not the guy for that." So I said, "Okay." So I said, phew. So I flew to Chicago with him, went in there, talked about the record. They loved it. We made a deal. We had a lawyer. We had a lawyer.
Right.
I didn't make the deal and say, "Sign it, here it is." It's not one of those. We had a lawyer. He had a lawyer they'd use with the Guess Who.
Yeah.
And it got done, and all of a sudden we were on Mercury Records. Well, then, once you put out the record, in those days, it was very simple in those days. These days now that kids get involved in music, I think it's really difficult. For us, we had one thing: we had to get it on the radio.
Right.
Get the song on the radio, and you didn't have radio now in America, for instance, is controlled by 3-4 people. That's it. Okay, we went from station to station to station. There, the most you could have are 6. Maybe one guy had 6 or 7 stations. That's all. But we had to go on the road. It was key to go on the road. It was key to get into the cities. The record company says, "Listen, we'll get that record started. We'll tell you where to go when to get there to push that record. We got to get places where we get it." And then, it's kind of building blocks. So I remember the first place we went was to Nashville. So because Nashville got on the record early.
Right. Okay.
And so we...
and that's kind of the thing, right? You got to go where
it's hot.
Where it's hot, yeah.
Yeah. So down we went to Nashville, and we opened up for ZZ Top down there, and it was a great show.
No way.
And the people loved it, and it was, and the station loved it. And every time you went there, and you went to the radio station to visit the radio station. You talked to them before the show. A lot of us did the interviews after the show. That was the way it was.
Right.
And Randy didn't want to be in a bus anymore. He wanted just to drive. So I said, "Okay, I'll drive because you guys are working." So I drive. So every night we'd finish the show, I'd collect the money, whatever, and off we went to the next show.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that for years and years. But when we finally broke the band, and I mean, we were just out there continually. He was never home we were on the road probably the first time for a month, and then they played 5 shows a week. And then after that, because you could go to little towns, you didn't have to go to the main centers, because the little towns had their own label, have their own record, and they play what they want.
Right. Okay.
So we got involved. That was the big the time of payola and everything else, and the guys could buy. They had people they paid, mob guys, who would go out and get them airplay on any number of stations,
right,
and trade that off for
kind of through force. Would they do that, or
not with force? They'd go there and put that thing on and put the rate get the record played,
right,
and the record company would pay them for it cost so much. And at one time when they started to crack down on that thing, I used to pay them because they couldn't be seen to pay to play. So our guy was running our thing on the streets. He was mob guys, and getting this thing signed. And
right.
They're independents. They weren't working with the label. The independents went and did it. And he would phone my wife, or not my wife, but my girlfriend at the time. She became my wife, but she would turn to my girlfriend and would tell her what the stations were. Now, when you got a major station like Chicago, that's $1,500. If you got a B station, which is say like that would be New Orleans, you pay $1,000. If you get a C station like Spokane, Washington, you paid $500.
Okay.
So he would phone and he'd say, "Okay," and he didn't know he was talking. He said, "Okay, write these station numbers down," because I had to pay them then, because they were cracking down on the guys paying payroll.
Right.
And so he used to say, "Okay, read out the 4 call letters, 1500. Here's the 1500. CKW, whatever. But then over to the 1000 ones.
Right.
Then off to the small ones. I would sit there and say, okay. And I went to the record company and get what we got. Tour support, we called it.
Yeah.
So they gave me tour support. I used to build them because we're out there not making enough money so they paid us tour support, and we just threw it back into where it had to go. We paid the bills, though, and then they paid us, this record companies. And it was like that for a long time. And BTO, it was when they were getting towards the end of their big run, it was in there pretty deep. And so when guys like Adams and
what years would they have been hitting the end of their run? Like late 70s?
Late 70s, yeah.
Okay.
And so Brian coming in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
Ditto, Loverboy in that area.
Yeah.
That was still going on.
Okay. It was like a crossover kind of.
Yeah, no, just it was just the straight payola stuff was still going.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And everything was the same, but again, it was a simple thing. You put out a record. You worked hard to get the record played. You did what you had to do. You go to, I can remember Brian driving around the streets taking pizzas to people.
Right.
They call up from the radio station. Brian Adams, I'll come take the pizza, and off you go. With the radio guy and take the pizza to the person. And that's how they put records on the radio in those days.
Yeah.
And there was some stations, and there's no doubt about it. If you got a big station in one of the top 5 or 6 cities, a lot of people would go that way. Mm-hmm. But, when I look back and I watch people who broke records out of Spokane, I've seen guys break records out of Detroit, and I've seen people break records out of Las Vegas. They can be anywhere.
Yeah.
It's hard to break a record out of Los Angeles or New York, but if you do, that it helps even in those days.
Right.
But we had to tour all the time. That's all we had. Okay, we didn't even have really a music show that you could do anything on. Right.
Right. Yeah. There wasn't like
now.
Early on there was like Soul Train and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right. Like. But later
Soul Train wasn't doing that many of my acts.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Of course. Yeah.
We could go on. We could go on some stuff, but basically most of the time it was go there, play radio shows.
Yeah.
Play radio shows, do things for the radio stations. Round and around they go in the circle, and you sell records. And like I said, it was very simple.
Yeah.
You could get the radio out, get the record out, get the radio, play it, then the record sold. People bought records. That's where it stopped.
Yeah.
Okay. And there were no downloading, none of that. So we go to places like Tower Records in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. That was like a gathering point for people.
Yeah.
They had guys parking the cars properly just because people bought records. Mm-hmm. And it was so euphoric to watch something take off because you can see it all of a sudden, just watch and boom, like this it goes. And it's just because radio got behind it. The band went into town, did all the right things, and they liked the music and the people and the way it went. And that's how we all did it. Mm-hmm. And so now, as I'm in the 2024, boy, it's a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
Okay. And when they say things that the playing records, now people are putting out records, so many records. There's so many records out there available on Spotify or whatever people download their stuff with. Mm-hmm. That it's like a low percentage of guys are making money off it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people making no money off there. They got the record out there, but it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And radio still means a lot, but radio is difficult now. Right? Pretty soon, I honestly don't know what's going to happen to radio.
Yeah. Even I noticed it. Like my generation does not listen to the radio.
No.
Only people.
Canuck games maybe on the way home.
Yeah, exactly. Or country. Like there's some people that listen to the country stations, but
country music is very popular.
Huge. Beyonce just released a country song.
Yes,
because that's kind of the root and everything's
cover all
going.
the bases.
Yeah.
A funny thing about that, Brian never wanted to play on the country bills, and I said, Brian, listen. I managed Martina McBride when she was in a country act, and we won, big award. We were a big award winner. She's one of the best singers of all time in the country business. Mm-hmm. And I can remember when I got down there, and they told me I had to come they took me to the office of the president of the company, and they said, listen, you're married to Martina McBride. Yes, we know your background. All your rock and roll bullshit that you do is not going to work here. Okay, it doesn't work the same way. Here's how it works. Number one, the publisher. Because most of those guys don't write their own music. They do now more, but in those days, you got songs. So the publisher's number one, two's radio, three is the fans, and fourth's the artist.
Okay.
And I used to say, oh, really? He says, yeah. And I said, so he says, don't come here and tell me how to do my job. And I didn't even, the first time I met him.
Right, yeah.
He says, because he knows where I came from.
Right.
And this is the different thing now. And it's all, you got to be fan friendly. So they say fan friendly. So with Martina McBride, I'm lucky because my guy who ran Joe Galante running RCA in Nashville had been in New York. So we kind of got along, and he guided me through it. And you have to do everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if they want you to come over and sweep the floors, you got to do it if you're an artist to get that thing. And in those days, to get the record played.
Right.
And that was a real trip. That was really interesting for me. But country music today, I think is, one thing I forgot. One thing I wanted to tell you is that they told me, Bruce, when you come down here, you go to a country bar at 11 o'clock, it flips right there to Def Leppard.
Okay, right, yeah.
Okay? It's nobody leaves.
Right.
They're into that now. They want to rock and roll now. It's 11 o'clock at night. So it's true. So when Brian argued to fight me for to go on a big country festival, I said, listen, you watch what'll happen. He said, okay, he was furious about it. This is only a couple of years ago. Right. And I said, we're going to do it. Let's see what happens. We'll headline this tent. Okay. And they put up tents. It's the same place as Coachella. Mm-hmm. And they put in these tents, and some guys play there, another play here, but they have it tents, and then everybody can spill out the back, and you can see it all. I don't know if you've ever been to Coachella, but that's
I haven't had the chance yet.
This is what this is like. So anyway, Adams goes on stage. There might have been 25,000 people there. The guy told me, Bruce, listen, when you get up there, he's going to be shocked. And he was shocked because out of maybe 23,000 people there, 18,000 were watching him. Yeah. So there's some hillbilly over there singing another song with 4,000 people, maybe separated, because there's like three people at once sometimes. Yeah. It's a big enough place. So that's when I told him, I said, listen, you can't knock this country stuff. Mm-hmm. Chad Kroger. Yeah. And he went out there with
Nickelback.
Nickelback this time. He took two country acts to open.
Wow, no way.
Yep.
Okay.
And brilliant move. Yeah. He's a really smart guy, Chad. He read it right, and he said they'll come, and they did. Yeah. And even in Vancouver, he opened with two country acts. They did the whole tour with him. Mm-hmm. And it's really smart. Because country music, they are listening to it on the radio. Yeah, for sure. We can't get a grip of somehow the Cowboys. They're moving up a bit, and they're playing rock music. Not really countrified like you and I grew up with. Right. But it's got that rock edge, and people like it. Yeah.
Yeah, and for all the flack that Chad Kroger and Nickelback get, I mean, they really did well for themselves.
They've really done well for themselves. He's a good guy. He's a really good writer. He knows who he is. He knows he's made some mistakes. He doesn't make those mistakes twice. And he's a talented guy, and I wish him. I really am a fan of his because he's just a rocker. He's just a rocker, but we were all that way. Yeah, he took some falls for some of the songs he wrote. Right, they were sexist, or they were this, or they were that. But come on, but he's out there again, and he's doing fine. Yeah. Yeah, are they on tour right now? No, not. They've been back for about 2 months.
Okay, gotcha.
And they went a whole run across Canada and the U.S. I don't want to put them down to Canadian because they do more than that. They do all of Europe, and they do all of Australia. They're a global band, and they do well.
Yeah, I think they're also making a bit of a resurgence with my generation because we obviously grew up listening to Nickelback. Yep. And then some of us stopped, but then some people are coming back to it. And it's just interesting with the whole rise in country and the crossover kind of with rock. And then now Nickelback has become like sort of a classic for Gen Z in a sense.
But we sit there nowadays, and I sit there, and you say, who are the new rock acts?
Right, yeah, there aren't a lot.
Like, we manage Offspring. Yeah. Okay, I get a call from Bob Rock, who I manage, a producer. Yes. And he says, listen, I'm doing this band Offspring. He said, Bruce, you got to help. Would you be interested in manage? I said, Bob, the last thing I want to do is manage a band. I don't need to talk to five guys. I mean, if you look at my career as it got longer, we dealt with one guy. Mm-hmm. Okay, a band, but there was one guy. Yeah, all the time. Yeah. So anyway, But this guy, I went to talk to him. He said, "Do me a favor, just go talk to him. I'm making a great record. I don't want it to just drift away." So I said, "Okay." I went down to Los Angeles to talk to him, and he was really smart. He had a PhD. He has a PhD, which stuns me. And a really, really bright kid, really, really good writer. And I said, "Okay." You know, and he had a small label, but a good label. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden now, these guys, we're going across, we'll do worldwide in 25, and we'll go right around the world. These guys will be staggering in arenas and outdoors and festivals.
Yeah.
It's I went there, how we've taken that band, this office, and people like who work here, Randy Burswick, who has been with me since the only job he had as an adult, he says, and he's 70. So him and Joe Faluna and Sadie Bathgate, people like that who are been in this business a long time with me, really got behind it, you know, because it's interesting to them, and they were floundering, but all of a sudden, you know, and you're going to watch things that happen. I mean, we're going to see some of the bands we've seen come through here doing stadium business. Yeah, is shocking. Yeah, you wouldn't think they'd have made doing that kind of business. You think they could sell out the GM Place, or whatever it's called down there, GM Place, but they would never, ever get into a stadium. But they are doing it. And all of a sudden, I'm watching TV, the guy who's going to do, for instance, who did the halftime show.
Usher.
He's going to come here. They're going to put him in BC Place. Yeah. He can't even believe it himself. He can't believe it. I mean, he's stunned. But the people get to see it, and they'll go. Jesus.
Yeah, it's surprising when you find out, like, you know, certain people, like, who maybe aren't the biggest for me, but then you find out how big they are for other people. Yeah, and you're like, oh, wow, okay.
One right off the bat, Taylor Swift.
Enormous. Like one of the biggest stars ever.
There's been nothing close to her. Yeah. Okay, and there's not a lot of people that I know sit around playing Taylor Swift records at home, but there's a massive amount of people that you can just see, and then everybody else gets dragged into it to see it. And you know what? She's a talented girl. I saw her when I was in Nashville when she started. She sang that first song, Tim McGraw at the Country Music Awards. Wow. She's 13 years old with an acoustic guitar.
Wow, no way.
Mind blowing. Yeah, and who knows then? My girl, my now wife tells me at the time, you said, yeah, you said, you know what you said? No, I said, you said that, and she has no hope.
Wow. Yeah, well, I mean, I saw a video recently of SNL 40, like the 40-year anniversary, and there was an after party, and it's her on stage with Jimmy Fallon is singing with her, and Paul McCartney. Yeah. And it's just funny to look at, like, even at that time, like, obviously she was a huge star when that happened, but even to see her just beside Paul McCartney and know, like, both of them are like legends in the music industry for totally different reasons from totally different eras. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just such a cool moment to see. And I don't know, there's just a lot of that kind of stuff where you're like, you don't even realize someone's going to be as big as they are. And then they take over the world.
Like Michael Bublé, when he was doing his record this time, he said, you know, we got to get Paul McCartney to sing with me on this record. Mm-hmm. So I gave them a call. I know the guys who do this stuff, and I gave him a call, and he said, I'd like to do that. I like Michael Bublé. I'd like to sing that song. It was he'd done it. It's his song. I'd have to look on the record, but he went in and he's in New York. Came to the studio, rode his bike to the studio.
No way. Paul McCartney did
in the middle of
hilarious
New York, and went in and no security, no nothing. Yeah, let's do this. Okay, let's do this. Yeah, and it was fantastic. You know, and that's when you see people like a girl there who worked for me worked for a Bublé organization, was pregnant, probably pretty close, but she was going to go to in New York to meet Paul McCartney.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Bublé's wife?
No, just a girl.
Okay, gotcha. She was like, yeah, I got to see Paul McCartney. Yeah, yeah. When you get an opportunity like that, you got to take it.
Yeah, and I was never a big Beatles fan, but he's a lovely guy. I've seen him when he played here. He's coming again, as you know.
Yeah. Is he coming again? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, and it's a show, it's nearly a show you got to see. And when you see it, and you sit there, and all those songs go running past your head.
Yeah, you're like, holy crap.
But does this ever stop? How many hits does this guy have? I mean, it's just unbelievable. Yeah. Because we forget.
So with Paul McCartney, like, biking through the streets.
Through New York.
Yeah, through New York. Yeah. Is that something you've noticed with artists, are they able to sort of turn it on, turn it off in a sense? I've heard that before where like they, someone like Paul McCartney could just ride his bike through the streets, or like people talk about it a lot with Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
He'll be out and people will just be like, oh, here he is just riding the subway, no security.
It is, because you don't make a fuss.
Right.
And, and guys sit there and they look at it, no, you're not going to say that.
Yeah, they're like, no.
He looks like, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Like Tom, when we were playing, but Eagles were playing at Hyde Park. I was lucky to go there and see it. I was in London at the time. And Tom Cruise, a big Eagles fan.
Okay.
So he phones up my guy who runs the agency that I'm at CA, and says, is it possible I could come? I got 4 or 5 people. Could I come and see the Eagles?
Right.
So he said, sure. But he's a client anyway, CAA, making a lot of money on the other end of the business.
Right.
So out he came, bodyguard, and went up there and watched the show. And then he said, listen, these guys, they come to him and say, listen, we got to get you out early or else you'll never get out. And he walked in all right.
Yeah.
Keep walking.
Yeah.
And a couple guys with him. And he said, well, he hasn't played Hotel California yet. I want to see that. So they can go and take them out. I'll go by myself. I can just walk home. I know where it is.
Right.
You really think so? Yeah. Don't worry. I'll get out of here. Believe me. And he was put on his hat, pulled down his thing, started walking.
Yeah.
And got home. And the agency says, you call me when you get to that door. and called me, and he made it. But, it's so funny, just stardom and guys. There's some guys who crave the attention. There's other guys who don't.
Yeah. It's interesting. And would you say that that's kind of the difference between like a star and an artist in a sense? Like there are people who want to be stars and people who want to be artists, and their art is what they want to get all the attention.
I think a lot of guys struggle with that because they have to. If the bigger you get, you got to go out and deal with some of that stardom, right? And I think you watch a guy like my partner manages James Taylor. James Taylor, I never thought was probably that excited to go out and do shows all the time.
Right.
He does it now because he knows it's what he does for a living.
Yeah.
And he's very good at it, and he's honest, and his audience loves him. He's 70-something. But I think he probably had a tough time. That's when he was having the addiction problems and stuff like that.
Okay.
You don't. I think that's why a lot of that stuff's used, because it's a lot to put yourself out there every night, especially if you're not comfortable at it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's hard. I think it's hard for. And then the biggest thing they deal with is it's so fleeting. Okay, McCartney. Who can sit there and say McCartney's actually had a 40-year career?
Yeah.
He was selling out shows when he was 24, whatever, 21. The Beatles were running around.
Yeah.
He's selling out stadiums still.
Yeah, it's true.
And he's so funny now because he has new songs all the time. He's trying, right?
Yeah, always putting out new stuff.
He says, I'm going to do 4 new songs, and I'm telling you now. So if you want to go get a beer, get it. But it's got 4 songs, and then I'll get back to what we...
Yeah.
Okay. Because the people they're not interested.
Right.
They're interested in what they know.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened to us now, is that it's really difficult for artists like Brian, for instance, it's difficult for him to get another hit. He had a big, long career, and now he's, it's difficult to get on the radio. It's a whole different thing now.
Yeah.
And the internet is driving to things, and people, who are doing that. It's really tough for the older artists, but it's not tough on them at the box office. It's shocking how many people are going to see acts. They can't do that business,
right?
But they can. I mean, Bob Rock produced
Metallica. Is that
not that Metallica's? Yeah, it was Metallica. What good for you, Metallica? He did. So they invited him to a show.
Yeah,
6 months ago, New York, 2 2-day stadiums.
Okay.
He went out there. He says, "It's fucking amazing." He says, "That album that they do their big album is a long time ago."
Yeah.
And so he went out there and he said, "Bruce, it was just He said, "These guys, but now we're different." He says, "We're not drinking, they're not doing drugs. They're older now."
Yeah.
Okay, and better show up in half-ass shape, or else you're gonna have a tough night. And he said it was just wonderful to see them, and that they to see them both bond, because he did two records with him, and then they go elsewhere. You lose touch, but they phoned her to come down and see him, and away they went.
Yeah.
And he says they were just lovely. I was here for the Kiss show. My friend manages Kiss, Doc McKee. He retired now right after that run, but he says, come on down to the, want to have dinner tonight. Boys are coming, having dinner. You want to come down? So I went down. And had dinner with these guys. Gene is the only one who wasn't there, but the other guys were there. The other two, and we got only two of them now original. They were there, and these guys are like 65.
Yeah.
Whatever they are.
Yeah.
Gene was there just for a while. He didn't want to eat dinner, but it's unbelievable. They got up there and he's got the other band members, right? And he ate. We took when last time they were 2 weeks. He took us to rehearsal here because a lot of people rehearsed here. U2 rehearsed here, and they sat in the forum there.
Right. Yeah.
The old hockey rink, and they sat there for like 6 weeks or to sit and record things.
Yeah.
And practice. But you go to come and see these guys. Took a couple people with me. I can't bring a couple. Yeah, you bring up. See these guys up there in their boots and no makeup, but doing the thing, going through what they got to do. Where are we going to be when we play this? You going there? You're going there. Got to make sure this bomb goes off. You don't step on it.
Right.
And up. Right. It's quite funny to watch them. They say they've retired. I don't know, and I don't know how they can because they still did big business.
Yeah.
People go to see Kiss. Kiss hasn't had a radio record out in 10 years.
Yeah.
But they're
people still love them.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is unbelievable.
Yeah. There's something to be said about like, what's the word? I don't know if it's iconism. Would that be? No, it'd be like, but bands that are iconic, like groups and whatever. I think they have a life that outlasts the band.
I think there definitely is. I don't think anybody can argue that.
Yeah.
When you see guys out there sitting there with their son,
yeah,
and they want to take their son to see what they grew up in,
yeah,
and their son invariably likes it because his dad's been playing records at home or something. You know, they know. But I'm always blown away by who comes to these shows, and you know, like I go to Offspring shows, and they're punks. He was a punk. They were a punk band.
Yeah.
Okay. Those people are now 50.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy that the people who were like bands in the 90s are now in their 50s.
That's right. And so I go to these shows, and they're there. These the same people. I'm still into it, and they go to work in the morning.
Yeah.
You know? It's just different.
Yeah.
We do that. We're going to go. If you put somebody, they've been asked to put some stuff in the Punk Museum in Vegas.
Cool.
So we're going down there. We got to give them some stuff, and they'll take tours around because they know all the punk scene. So they'll say people pay like $1,000 to go on this walking tour with one of the guys, and he'll take 6 of them and say, okay, they talk about all the different punks they saw,
right?
Punks they play with, and tell them stories, and they'll think they died and got to heaven. You know? So yeah, it's kind of cool. But you really seen this, and the ticket prices are ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I remember I started with BTO. We argued over a $10 ticket.
Okay, as it being too high?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Because we were at $8.
Wow.
ZZ and them guys, we were all $8. But then big deal, we got to $10.
Right. Yeah. Now it's like, you know, 112
Somebody phoned me up today. Said, I want to go to see Robert Plant and the girl. He sings. She's really good. He sings. He's going to do some show here. He said, Bruce, the tickets are $252. See, you're fucking kidding. He said, no. He sent me the thing over. And he says, when you add on the service charges, holy Christ.
Yeah.
You know, and okay.
Yeah.
Robert Plant, you're not going to get Led Zeppelin anymore, but he'll sing the song with the girls he makes that record with. And the record sing does really good. I'm going to go see it because it's going to be one of a lifetime maybe to see. I don't think you'll see it again.
Yeah.
But he's, you know.
Hello and goodbye.
How'd it go? You finished?
At this point, Bruce's assistant Jordan came into the room to introduce herself and say goodbye for the day.
Once or twice, yes.
We spoke for a brief bit, exchanged a few laughs, and when Jordan left, Bruce began to tell me about why he hires only women in his office.
See, I hired it here, all women. And I've had, Sandy's been with me for, we had a 40th anniversary. One of them had a 40th, and the other one's been here 36 years. Her dad was Andy Bathgate, the hockey player. Great hockey player in the 50s, 60s. And I remember she was in a record company, and I said, why you come to West Coast? She's an Ontario girl, but she's born in Pittsburgh, already played in Pittsburgh. So anyway, she came here, and he pulled me up. Bruce, Andy Bathgate, I think this is pretty cool. Andy Bathgate, he's talking to you know, he's Hall of Fame. He said, listen, my daughter, never been away from home. We moved around a bit, but she's always had her mom and me in the same home. Now listen, it's the first time she's not going to be with anybody, so you look after her. He says, please look after her. I says, Andy, don't worry. I'll look after her.
No.
I'll take care of her. And she's been here that long, 44 years.
Wow.
36 years. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you say that the people who work with you here are probably the closest relationships you have at this point?
Yeah, I would say they have to be in that for sure.
Yeah.
Because you see them every day. Mm-hmm. But I'm just amazed at how well and how interested it is for me is to see that I also got kids here. Like that one's 23 or 24. I got another one there, 22. I got another one 19, I think 2019 or 20. And how good they are on what I'm not good at.
Right.
And that's really humbling for me. Okay, I have to, and I'm not going to learn it.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's so wonderful to see these kids who like music, love music, like being around it, but can really understand what's going on in the charts and everything now. Up on like that. You know, it was so easy for us. And just Billboard magazine, here's the numbers. Everybody got their turn. If you paid enough and did enough to something, you're going to be number one. Yeah. Okay, now it's just, boy, it's just different how they see a hit is. Yeah. We're working now, Michael Bublé with this Jason Derulo.
Okay, yeah.
We're working a record with him. He's singing on it. Man, been a learning curve here for about a month. Yeah. So the record's out now, and it's been out for 2 weeks, and you can see it starting to move, and it's moving. When somebody says to me it's 148 in America, that 148 next week will turn into probably 65. And they're just doing spins, right? You know, and all these things. We didn't do that before. Radio, they don't give a shit about. Radio will follow. Radio follows. They got to. Yeah. They can't lead the way anymore.
What was it like being around for the switch from like vinyl to CDs?
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because everybody bought the same record again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I guess it was kind of like the business kind of stayed the same.
Yeah. Now, isn't it funny?
It's just the format. So different.
The CD wrote out. Just kept on. Okay, CD, they were easy. You put in your car, bang, all the stuff is good, you know. Yeah. And so everybody bought the same records. That's what they did. And away we went. I can remember when I was in Nashville and at the University of Tennessee, they discovered the first thing they did, they call it, the first thing when they downloaded records off the servers. What was the name of that?
Oh, Napster?
Napster. Yeah. Thank you. It's a long time ago. Napster. So Napster, I was at meetings down there, and I went to see the record company president, and I said, Luke Lewis, he was, and he's the guy who broke Shania Twain. And I went and I had a talk with him, and I said to him, Luke, what do you think it's Napster thing? These guys are getting these records for nothing. Yeah. What do you think, Bruce? It's great to be old. Because he knew I'm out of here.
Yeah, he's just like, okay, this is it. Yeah.
I've had it. Yeah. I felt old enough, you know. And it's intimidating.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think Steve Jobs, when he came out with iTunes, do you think that was kind of the era where like he had figured out how to make it fair for the artists and fair for everybody else in the business? Whereas then once it became streaming, it started becoming way, way more in the favor of the business people rather than the artists.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're not, you know, like I said, we're not, you know, the new Green Day album, so, just been out for 2 weeks or so, right?
Right.
It's just supposed to be a sensational record. I haven't heard it. But the Green Day guys, fans have said it's really good, and they did everything right. They put out the album, they put out vinyl, they put out 10 kinds, different colors in vinyl. They put everything out, they set it up.
Yeah.
Boom. 30,000 records first week. That's all. I worked for a year, for not a year, but every week, Brian sold over 100,000 records a week to 6 months.
So there's such a big difference in although I guess now record sales, they don't necessarily determine how many people are listening to you, but it definitely determines how much you're making from your records.
Music. Yeah, not much, because what are we making as soon as we go over to the... Yeah, they spit out the money.
Yeah, I heard Snoop Dogg recently was talking about he put out a record, and I think he had like millions of streams on it, and he made $45,000
Yep.
off that.
Yep. But you know what they do too? It's funny because we had to do this record with Jason Derulo. Mm-hmm. And do you know how many writers were on that record now? 9.
9 writers.
So when you get publishing, and it's the same publisher. If one guy writes it or 2 guys write it.
Yeah.
But when there's 9 guys writing it, believe me, people aren't making a lot of money. But it was unbelievable, and I just said, "Holy Christ!" Because Michael, I tell you what it's good for though is that it's good for people like in the old days who didn't make any money on records just because of the business. Mm-hmm. Okay, now see these old records are getting played and they're decent and sold. And people are buying records or downloading, and these are getting something, and it's kind of a big win for them.
Yeah,
they didn't expect to get it, and that's why when we try and get records like he's got that song "Sway." It's a bit a Jason Derulo song. It's "Sway." We stole the sway just about da 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 da.
Right,
and we had to we have to chase the guy who wrote that, and he's got a gun to our head. Believe me, he's in the driver's seat. Okay, he got his 25 points or whatever it's going to be percent. He's one of the guys who got that. But the rest of us are groveling, pieces of bread on the ground, crumbs. We're going after them just to see if we can make some money. But God Almighty, you're fighting it. You don't pay the lawyer for God's sake.
Yeah.
And he said to me, my lawyer said to me, he said, listen, this Michael Bublé, no matter how big this record gets, the most money he'll make off this record is less than he makes in one night on a private show.
Crazy.
Less. One night you can do more. When he does, people ask us to come in for a company and do this stuff.
Yeah, which is totally the opposite of what it used to be, right? The live stuff was a lot cheaper, but now live is where artists are making most of their money.
Yes, they have to. But now our big thing is, and Chad found out, and Bublé's found out, and all of us, these are big shows now, but you know what? They're big costs now.
Yeah.
We were always out at maybe a 10-truck tour was the biggest one. You got these people out there now with 60 trucks. I mean, do you know what that costs? And every one of those drivers is sitting in a hotel room.
Yeah.
And you got to pay his per diems and a gas bill or diesel bill.
Yeah. I wonder how many, how big the crew was for Taylor Swift's shows.
I got a friend of mine's, a couple of guys who work for Bublé are working on it. They think it's the best tour they ever been on.
Yeah?
Everybody got $100,000 bonus at the end of the year.
Oh, what? Everybody?
Everybody.
That's crazy.
Everybody.
That's amazing.
And they work 3 nights a week.
Yeah. Wow. What?
Yeah.
That's bananas. Pretty cool, though.
They love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they pay their way home. They pay it to fly them home every week.
Wow.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, and it goes to show, obviously there's still, a business. There's still money to be made, and artists can do well.
Live business is a huge business.
Yeah.
That's why Live Nation's in there doing what they're doing.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I was actually just talking about that in school the other day, just about how, Ticketmaster owns 80% of...
But that's Live Nation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they own Live Nation.
Imagine.
Yeah.
Scalp their own tickets.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
The thing though with Live Nation is big thing that they got and is the amphitheaters.
Yeah.
People like to go outside in the summer. And it's easy to do 13, 14,000 in those things. And people like it.
I've heard there was a big bidding war between Live Nation and, is it AEG?
Yeah.
Over the Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah.
Because that just recently...
That's right. We got to go down there to do something to her. Well, it's Henry Mancine's 100th birthday. He's dead, but it's his 100th birthday.
Right.
Bublé did something for him, and so we're going down to see him in that. That'll be fun.
Cool.
But that's just a day of something. You can sing, cut this off.
Yeah. It's a fun one.
You're supposed to. You honor those guys because they were there writing this stuff for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
It's interesting.
Yeah, people like Gershwin, right?
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
You go see the Elvis movie?
I did. I was actually going to ask you about Elvis. Yeah.
I met Elvis 2 or 3 times.
Wow.
And my agent for Back in Turn Overdrive worked for Colonel Park.
Okay. Yeah.
And he took us down to the show, go and meet Elvis, talk to Elvis a couple of times. Mm-hmm. It's really unnerving because even the guys in the band
it's Elvis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nerves. Yeah. But he was always polite, always nice with him. it's a sad story. But, you know, you look at Elvis Presley, you look at Marilyn Monroe, you look at James Dean, and you say that's why they're still icons, because we never saw an old Elvis or an old Marilyn Monroe. Never got, you know, she died.
Yeah, so they're kind of frozen in time.
Frozen in time.
So the reason I wanted to ask you about Elvis was because you said in an interview one time, showmanship is like the most important thing for an artist. And I was curious if, because of Elvis, I know you're a big fan of Elvis, that he would have sort of
he led the
portrayed that to you. Yeah,
he led the way. Most of the guys were just standing around and playing, right? And he was the guy who started moving around. It's like in the movie with the girls watching him.
Yeah, and they're all like, oh,
yeah, you know, he kind of got it. So it was really a closeted type of kid when you were in the 50s. You know, you just different. All of a sudden, this is very dangerous, right? And that's why of course, they made a big fuss about it. The best thing ever happened to him, maybe, is having that, you know, and you say something's illegal, and kids can't like it, boy, they'll start liking it.
Yeah, kind of like, if you know, kind of a funny comparison, but later on, NWA became like that kind of a thing where everybody was like, oh, I can't believe they're saying this stuff or doing this stuff.
I know. It's open the door a bit, push in the window. And, you know, the record business here, when we had Bruce Fairburn over there at what is called the recording company over there, we had records that were made there. It was Backman Turner Overdrive. Metallica came in here, and what else did Bob do? He did Tommy Lee and all those guys.
Oh, Motley Crue.
Motley Crue. Definitely Bon Jovi. All these records that were made out here. It was the hottest place in the world.
Yeah.
For making records for a short period of time.
Yeah.
And it was really neat.
Was that like late 80s, early 90s kind of time?
Yeah. And they had a documentary on TV out the other night, about a month ago. And it was really interesting to see how much stuff that we put out of here.
Yeah.
Because they heard the Loverboy album, like John Bon Jovi, just loved the sound of the bass and everything.
Yeah.
The drums. And he had done some, Bruce Fairburn, who I managed then too, and Bob Rock. Bob Rock's the engineer,
right?
But he's the producer. And,
gotcha.
Bruce would figured out that the way they would get a good drum sound is put it in the loading bay. So far away from the studio, it was unbelievable. But they built something in there because the echo in there was good. And all these bands came here, wanted to get that sound. And it was fascinating.
Yeah.
And then Fairburn dies, and it was stupid. But just it was a good city for music.
Yeah. And how come it switched, do you think? How come it sort of faded off?
Well, it became...
Or has it?
There's not much recording here like there used to be.
Right.
But if the acts were recording here and they made it work, and it was easier then time, we were on 8 tracks or some 10 tracks and 16 tracks, and then you get the big, huge tracks. Adams has got the best studio down the street there.
Yeah.
The best studio in Canada.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's, you know, it's one of those big boards that they have, and do it now. I think just it's all about equipment, and people didn't want to come here. People would rather go to Los Angeles. They always wanted something. There's stuff in New York, there's stuff in Nashville, there's stuff in Florida. You know, they just want to go where they can go now, because now it's so different than the sound of the room.
Right.
Okay, they can record in your house and make it work.
Yeah, it's true.
That's the big changes. Who's the girl and her brother?
Oh, Billie Eilish.
That's where she recorded.
Yeah, exactly.
Fucking bedroom.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Crazy. Yeah. And I guess that would be kind of the thing that is better about this era, is people can do that, like the doorway between
you can make
making
records.
your art.
You can make records in your basement.
Yeah.
You can make records in your house. You make your own records. If you learn how to do it, that's the way to do it. You could never do that in our day.
Yeah. Although I think the only instance I can think of from back then of someone kind of doing something like that was Boston.
Yeah.
Because I know
But he was a electronics nut. He
totally. Yeah.
But if you made Elvis records, though, they were sitting in a little studio with a 4-track machine.
Right.
4 or 5. And if you go down there, it's great. It's to go in that room and see where they stood and where he was doing that.
Yeah.
The same board.
Is that Sun Records? Sun Records. Yeah. Yeah.
It's fabulous. They didn't tear it down.
I'm a big Johnny Cash fan.
He made records there.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So Sun Records is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I quite liked that Joaquin Phoenix movie that they did back in 2005.
That was good.
Yeah. So something that came up earlier that you were talking about that I was curious about is the club scene.
Huge club scene.
Yeah. Versus the like booking arenas, booking tours, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I know that sometimes when people get to a certain level, they're like, oh, you know what? I actually liked being in this area. Of all the like different levels that you've reached, was there ever a time where you were like, oh, that's kind of the area I like to work in the best?
Well, I like to be on the road with the big bands.
Okay.
But the club business here was very, very affluent. I made huge money out of the club business when I was a kid, and we had really good bands, and people came up here. Actually, like I told you, the black front man. There had a lot of bands because Seattle.
Right.
Came up here, and Tina Turner I saw in clubs here, like that. And it was a very good scene because if they played the band, they played the chart, they played what's on the radio.
Yeah.
But I mean, and then they started to, of course, want to write their own songs, and they'd stick 2 or 3, 4 of those in a night. That's how we found all these artists. Randy, he could play the Guess Who songs, but he was in a four sets a night stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so he could play those, but he'd be writing songs. He'd stick them in, and then he'd play a bunch of other songs that he can do.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I thought it was really healthy. I think that's why a lot of guys come out of here because it's one of the best scenes in North America at that time.
I guess Bachman Turner Overdrive would have been the first
out of here,
first one that you went on like a big tour with. Yeah. What was that experience like?
Well, we just I drove the whole thing. We'd pick cars up in Seattle. We'd drive to it because Randy didn't want to be at a bus anymore because a couple of buses, he was in a bus crashes with the Guess Who. And he said, I just want to drive. He says, okay. So one thing you knew about that, you can only drive as far as equipment can get in one day too.
Right.
So you're talking about 300-mile drives or something, maybe max. And so you got the roadies are driving the truck and maybe 2 trucks, maybe 2 vans.
Yeah.
A truck and a van. I'm driving the van. They're all stuck in there, big guys off the go. And that's what it was. 5 shows a week.
Yeah.
And you just drive it. We used to pick up the cars in Seattle. They said, how long are you going to keep it? I says, I got to drive around maybe 3 weeks. I'll bring it back. Okay, make sure you drop it here. Yes, I will. And we drop them off where we end up, where the tour end up.
Yeah.
New Orleans, okay, I will drop the car here. They'll find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We get a fine for that. But I mean, that's what we did for him. Then we got back into buses for a while. Mm-hmm. And they're still traveling buses. A lot of these guys. Michael can't stand it anymore. He's chartering more. But I'll tell you one thing, and I tell him this, is when I was in in Nashville, I went to a meeting with all the accountants and business managers. And they said the downfall of these artists is going to be private jets.
Right.
The cost.
Because they're all going to want it, but it's going to cost a crazy amount of money. Yeah.
It's going to cost us, we'll go do a private. They'll pay us 7 figures for a private in Toronto. He'll fly it, and boom, out he goes and comes back. That's a $60,000 bill, You can't do that every night. Hey, you got to be making decent money.
Yeah.
You just blow your brains out. But when they pay you stupid money for private, so you just say, what the hell?
Who are the people you've met or artists that you've met that were very good at balancing the business side with the, I want
Not very many.
Not many?
Who is McCartney.
Okay.
Yeah, his dad was an accountant. Remember, that's why the big.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and so he was good at that. Nobody in Metallica really. Nobody in Motley Crue. No, those guys just threw them if they can get to the gig. It's difficult.
Yeah, most of them are just kind of focused on the art, right? They don't
the
really
art, the fun.
Yeah, and the fun. Yeah, exactly.
You can't have the guy picking up the money having the fun.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I know that it's always interesting to see portrayals of managers in films trying to wrangle the artists. I know in Straight Outta Compton they had a lot of scenes of Jerry Heller being like, "Hey, you guys need to cut this shit out." Yeah,
that's unbelievable.
Yeah,
and see the interesting thing, Randy was good because Randy had made it, got kicked out of the band for being a Mormon, and then had something to prove. And went out and he ran that band. And the guys did what he was told, and they were younger brothers and Fred Turner. Mm-hmm. He ran that band really well. He knew what the costs were. We stayed in the Holiday Inn. They only stayed in the Holiday Inns. I remember when we were traveling too, remember that? When we were phoning on the road, and I was on the road, we had to phone at gas stations or to pay phones. We didn't have cell phones.
Right, yeah.
So we had to, fill up the car, get somebody to go talk to the phone there for 20 minutes or so.
Right.
That's what we did.
and like figure out the gigs that were coming up and all that kind of stuff.
Do I need? The record company tells me who's am I going to see there, who's going to be there, who guy from radio station, you got to kiss his ass, that kind of stuff. Yeah, not anymore. It's easy.
Oh yeah, okay. So you mentioned Billboard earlier.
Yeah, Billboard.
And I thought this was really interesting. I found this out in 1985. They named you Manager of the Year.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty cool as a Canadian, being named Manager of the Year in like
I think
the biggest.
First time it happened, yeah.
What was that experience like, or how did it feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a tribute. We were pretty hot then. Adams was hot. BTO was coming down at that time, and Loverboy was hot.
Yeah,
it was really really quite an honor to do that, to win that, and because a lot of managers never get it, and other guys have got it 5 times, but that's just different acts, Yeah, I've taken all these acts from here, except now Osprey.
Right.
I got Manager of the Year too with the country acts with Martina, and I did it because she was going to get the Garth Brooks tour, and I knew it ahead of time.
Oh, okay.
And that was a big tour.
Yeah. Yeah, it was huge.
I mean, Garth made us all look like silly. when they took the Billboard chart and made it legitimate on real, instead of we could buy our way, we could adjust the chart where everybody gets their turns. Then they said, "Fuck you! No, we're not doing that. We're getting the counts. We're getting the record counts."
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Mutt Lange's in the studio with Adams. Bruce, who in the hell is fucking Garth Brooks? And that's before I started with him. And I said, "Cowboy guy."
Yeah.
He says, "#1 record." And he's got #1 record, or #3 record, or #8 record, or something in the top 10. We didn't know who he was. And then what did he do? He saw Shania Twain. He was making a record with Brian over Mushroom Studios.
Right.
And he saw Shania Twain on TV. And he said, "Yeah, I got some songs," because he's a good writer. He really helped Brian. He wrote great records with Brian. And he said, "I'd like to, could I go down and meet her?" I said, "Do you know her?" I says, "No, I don't." But I said, "I'll tell you what. We go down there. They have this thing for the fans to come to his fan day or something, and they all have booths, like kissing booths in a fair. But this is inside a big a place like the PNE. Mm-hmm. So there'd be 2 big buildings, and they all set up little things, and people come around. They sign autographs, and they sell their pictures and this and that."
Yeah.
So I said, "She'll be there because they have to be there. They make us go there."
Yeah.
Okay. And so because like I said, the audience comes ahead of the fucking musician in the country business. So we sat at your little booth like fuck. So anyway, and Garth didn't do that. He just sat out in the parking lot.
Right.
And leaned against his pickup truck, sat in a pickup truck and signed people. When
people just came up and, wow, that's kind of cool.
He'd do it for 10 hours.
Wow.
And he said, "I went to see Shania." And I says, "Well, you come down on this night because that's when she's going to be there." So we went down because he could see her sing too that night. So I came down and I knocked on the door. Luke Lewis was the guy, what I told you earlier. He said, "Is Shania things?" I said, "Yeah, Shania." Bruce said, "Oh, hi." I nothing met her before because down there, but didn't know her about. And I said, "The gentleman here to meet you, Mutt Lange." She didn't know who Mutt Lange was. And he says, "Listen, I'd be interested in producing you." She didn't know what he was talking about.
Right.
Okay, Mutt Lange is a huge producer, one of the biggest in the world. She didn't know what he. So he said, "Listen, I've got some songs that I'd written." She said. And he said, "Well, why don't you give them to me? And can I listen to them?" Mm-hmm. I said, "Okay." And she gave him the songs, and he took them, and he fiddled around with them, and then he wrote a bunch of ones too that she didn't give him, and he made those records, and she sold records, fucking, and he did that record. He did all the big records at one time. If you look at his thing, look at Mutt Lange, just see what he's produced. It's frightening.
Yeah.
And that was it. He did the songs for her, he made the records for her, everything. And
yeah, she went through the roof.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have talks with her and her team about managing her at any point?
I had it at that time.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do it. I didn't want to do it with Martina. And I've had it when she fired the last guy, and she phoned me and said, "Would you be interested?" And I said, "Listen, Shania, I got to do it for the same thing." And she said, "I'm not going to pay 15%. I said, "Then I can't do it."
Right.
And she said, "Can I give you 10%? I'll give you 10%. And I said, "Shania, I don't want to do it for 10%. I can't." They said, because you got other people, they don't pay that much. So you don't pay that price. So I said, "I'm not going to do it." So I didn't. And I really didn't want to because it's quite difficult.
Yeah.
But I mean, she did ask.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Who are some of the people that you have had talks with that you passed on that you thought maybe I should have given that another chance or tried?
I can't,
Not many.
No. I've taken stuff I said yes to that I should have passed.
Yeah.
Done those things. But I've had a good career, long career.
Yeah. Actually, something I wanted to ask you about was longevity with artists. Someone like Bryan Adams or like a Michael Bublé versus a Loverboy or a Prison in terms of longevity. What do you think it is that they did differently or had that sort of separated them?
I think one-on-one is a lot easier. I think you don't have the arguments. You don't have to we got to make sure we get some of his songs on and some of my songs. There's lots of things made in bands like that doesn't make it for a great record all the time.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest difference. You one-on-one and with one-on-one
being a solo artist versus a band.
Like when Michael comes and we sit and talk, it's really invigorating because he's really smart. He knows what he wants to do. It's a whole different thing for me. And I mean, so I had to learn what he does in his style. He made it work. Nobody bet on that one.
Right.
Okay. And I did it because David Foster did it. I used to manage Foster before he was big, and he was in a band. But I sat there and you talk to him. And nobody else in the room is going to say, "Well, no. Why don't we do this?" You don't have to go through that. Mm-hmm. It's him and I, him and I, him and I, him and I. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's important because when you're in a band, boy,
for personalities, for different types of people to work with,
different vision. Yeah. For the same thing.
Yeah.
And they're not negative. They're different way they go about it.
Yeah.
Stuff. Oh boy.
Yeah. Do you think that oftentimes, obviously, the front man is usually the guy making the decisions? Do you think that sometimes they're making too many of the decisions, and there's other people in the band that actually have better ideas?
I don't know because I haven't been in that situation really.
Right.
Paul Dean ran that band to that extent, but he knew Mike Reno was a great singer, and Mike Reno's a pretty good writer too. Yeah. So that they did. He worked with Mike, and that kind of did that. And the only change they ever had in that band is actually the guy drowned. And he,
oh wow.
Yeah. When he was out sailing, and they kept the same band going. So I give him a lot of credit for that. And Paul's a good leader that way. He'll listen. And but they had their run too. It's now they put out records, but we don't hear about it. Yeah. It's hard for those acts to get on the radio again.
I also wanted to ask you about some more personal stuff. Over the years, obviously things change for people. I was wondering, what are some things that maybe were super important to you when you were younger that now you're at an age that you've kind of let go of them?
Well, there's a lot more on your plate now than there was. Things that I don't think that's really hard. And I don't think I've ever given I've traveled endless. Okay. Yeah. There's no doubt now that I don't travel as much, but it's not because I don't want to. It's just because there's too much to do. I mean, all I had to do before was get the record out there, work on the record company, work with them, or get the tour booked and go out and do it. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then come back and do it all over again. But now there's too much. There's just too much. I can't sit out there in a hotel room trying to hold this together. Yeah. And then get it on a flight to the next town. I just can't, or bus. So I just can't go out as much as I used to. And that's why I got a staff of people, and the bands have people that are out there doing that. I can't do it. It's just too detailed now.
So you think that the teams have kind of gotten bigger now because of just the amount of stuff that you have to do?
Yeah. It's I envy a guy with one act. You could do it.
Right.
Yeah. But, and a lot of these guys have one act, and that's all they do, and I get it,
Yeah. I also had a question about how does an artist know with a manager that they're getting a good deal? Because there's certain situations like with Taylor Swift, her whole Scooter Braun situation where she had to start doing her own songs or redoing her own songs to get money from their songs. So what is it that an artist can come into and they know oh, this is a guy.
Well, there's a thing, there's a percentage of it, and that's it. And then you argue over it. And, I'm not going to talk a lot about what my deal is. It's my business. I think that there's a figure, and that figure most artists pay. Taylor Swift's thing, I think, was he did stuff, I think, from a distance, getting rid of, sold her stuff. Man, that's pretty cold. Yeah. But, she's an interesting case because her dad built the record company for him.
For Scooter.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he had another guy. Then Scooter came in as a manager. Scooter was a rat right down in running a bar in Atlanta,
Okay.
and that's where he found Justin Bieber too. Remember?
Yeah.
It was before her,
Yeah.
and he then got into the management side, and then he teamed up with the guy who had that thing in Nashville, and he married a girl from here actually.
Oh, no way. Scooter Braun did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not anymore, but he's not really interested in the music business. He's got a bigger fish to fry than fucking around with the music business.
Okay. Like what? What other?
He said, but he runs a company, financing and stuff like that. That's
Okay.
that's his real business.
So he's kind of moved on a little bit.
And I can see why he does. It's tough working with artists. They're not exactly the most easiest thing. It's like sports. Nobody has to get rid of a guy or tell a hockey player to retire or a football player. They know it. They might want to hang on for a couple of years, but they know
When it's time. Yeah.
You're not going to be running out there at 50.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's like I think Tom Brady, right, just finished his whole career. He knew. He was like, I know, now is the time.
Yeah, but he was a long time, but he never got hit hard. He get the ball away faster than anybody else.
Yeah.
But that's a freak.
Yeah. Yeah. Bruce and I began to wrap up our interview here. I was thankful to have had the chance to learn about Bruce and his life. Perhaps another interview is in the future, as I had many more questions for Bruce, and I am sure he had many more answers and stories. Until then, this is Aidan Hennessy, and I hope that you enjoyed listening to my interview with Bruce Allen.